When I first began doing these videos, you saw Simba the Wonder Dog. Simba is my wife and I's dog who, if you know us, we enjoy that dog. And he is undoubtedly smarter and better than any other dog that walked the planet of the earth. He's just a great dog. He really is. But what we do so often is we'll look at him and he'll do something and we think he's acting more human than he really is. We often go, oh, he understands. He can read this emotion or he can read that. And so often, it could be that he does. I think their dogs are very perceptive. But the point is, we so often personify, we think he's human and fail sometimes to treat him like a dog. And quite honestly, it's not a big problem, but it is a problem. You can go too far with that. But a bigger problem that we all have as believers in Jesus Christ is when we make God like ourselves. And I'm talking about God the Father. Yes, Jesus came and he was fully man and fully God. But at the same time, we got to be very careful that in our definition of God, that we don't weaken who he is or actually bring insult upon his name because we try to make him like ourselves. In Psalm 50, the psalmist Asaph actually brings condemnation upon the people of Israel because they, quote, thought that he was altogether like themselves. In other words, the people thought and assumed that they could act and live however they wanted to because God didn't care. He was one of them. It's like God's a buddy. God's one that, he doesn't really care. He's not, you move away from the entire definition of God. But if you read earlier in that psalm, the psalmist is reminding us that it's not our rituals that we go through. It's not the things that we do that matter, but it's our understanding of who God is. He's the sovereign God of all creation. The psalm reminds us that the cattle on the hills are his, the birds in the sky are his, everything is his. He even says, don't you know that I don't need your sacrifices to be fed. I don't need that food. It may be hard for us to understand, but God doesn't need us. He's not reliant on us. Simba, the wonder dog, is reliant on us to feed him, to take care of him. But God does not need us. Now, here's my challenge for you. The danger is when we minimize God and when we redefine God to our own liking so that we can go through life easier and we can seem to accept him easier. So you know what? I think God appears this way. No, I'm not going to accept God that way. But the minute we assume God is like us, too like us, we rob him of who he really is. And if we take away his power and his might and his holiness, if we take away, as Hebrews says, that God is still a consuming fire and we are to worship him with fear and reverence, we take that away and we minimize that. We minimize who God is. And the minute we minimize who God is, it not only cheapens our faith, but it cheapens the gospel. And when the gospel is cheapened and we fail to understand our own sin, we fail to understand who God is, we fail to remember what Christ has done for us. We fail to remember that he takes care of us and watches over us. We weaken the gospel. But here's one more thing. You weaken the concept of God being all-knowing, all-powerful. Weaken who he is. You weaken a sense of safety and security that he offers to us. You take away the fact that when he says that he's a mighty fortress, he's that safe place for us as believers in Jesus Christ. You weaken your faith. So here's my challenge to you. As the Lord Prayer reminds us to pray, hallowed be thy name, don't neglect who God is. Spend time in Scripture. Embrace all that he is. Embrace it deeply, because as you recognize who he is, you will find true faith and true comfort, especially when you realize that all of that is given to us. We have access, we have protection, we have blessing from God the Father through Jesus Christ. Don't make the mistake of the people of Israel, who assumed that the great I Am was altogether like themselves and missed out significantly. I'm Bob Orner, and I'd like you to think about that.